What's going on?
Here's what's going on, buddy. The day we get married is the day I ship those brats off to Switzerland. Get the picture? It's me or them. Take your pick.
Them.
Excuse me?
T-H-E-M. Them. Get the picture?
Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm Tiana.
And this is Next Door Villain,
A podcast where we uncover the villains to discover their humanity.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Next Door Villain.
Hello! Thank you for joining us on this wonderful morning, afternoon, or nighttime, whichever time you're listening.
It's the great thing about podcasts, you can listen anytime.
Yes.
You can tell we're a little rusty because we just took about a month and a half break and we're just getting back into the swing of this.
Man, and we felt that a month and a half was what we needed to get ourselves back on our feet after the rough and intense holidays that we had. Even though my holidays were actually pretty relaxing.
Oh, good. Mine were as well. But you know who did not have a relaxing holiday?
Did she even have a holiday?
Not that I'm aware of.
Let me guess. It was some really feisty, sexy lady from a beloved 90s movie.
Yes, you are correct.
Oh my gosh.
Her name
Thank
is
you.
Meredith Blake from, of course, Disney Channel's The Parent Trap.
I certainly love a good old twin film. There's no one else who'd be best at talking about being a twin than the person I'm talking to right now.
That's me. Oh yeah, I am part of a twinship.
But you always knew that person was your twin, right?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, my parents did not divorce at an early age and then split the children between them and then not tell me that I had a twin brother.
Oh, that's good, because apparently that was hard to come by in the 90s, according to
right.
that movie.
Yes. If you haven't seen The Parent Trap, it's available to stream on Disney+. Both the 1998 version with Lindsay Lohan and the 1961 version with a different actress who I don't know. If you're in your mid to late 20s and early 30s, it would have been hard to avoid this movie because it was a great classic 90s Disney film.
Oh, yeah. I loved it. I thought it was so funny. Like, I just remember laughing so much watching Lindsay Lohan do little pranks in the cabin. And I was like, I want to do that.
I actually did not see The Parent Trap when I was growing up. I actually just watched it last week for the first time. And I didn't find Lindsay Lohan's little pranks all that amusing, specifically when she started doing them on Meredith Blake, our villain for today, who is described in the movie as a Cruella de Vil type.
Yeah, they do say Cruella de Vil. And I was like, hell yes, she is. That's a good thing.
I found, yeah, exactly. I found her incredibly sympathetic, especially as I watched Lindsay Lohan's character torture her in numerous ways for seemingly very little reason. Of course, we will get into that in more detail later on, but before we dive too far in, we got to do our 30-second intro challenge where we spend 30 seconds trying to describe an entire character arc as best we can with absolutely no preparation whatsoever. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
All right, so Meredith Blake is a publicist, and she is a pretty successful 26-year-old, and she wants to marry the twins' father. In fact, she really likes him. She also kind of likes his money, and she gets really annoyed with the twins because, well, first she didn't know that there was a second one because not a lot of people did, and then she got really upset because they kept torturing her, and there's nothing worse than getting tortured by one Lindsay Lohan. Except getting tortured by two.
Nice. I like the wrap up there.
I tried.
Really, getting tortured by multiple Lindsay Lohans sounds pretty horrific.
Right. I mean, I'd probably welcome it right now, Just kidding.
I think I'd prefer the cute young Lindsay Lohan
Then right now.
to the Lindsay Lohan of today.
Lindsay Lohan just walks in like, I'm going to put honey all over you. I'm going to put you on a mattress, put you out into the river. I'd be like, okay. All right. Ready, set, go.
Okay, Meredith is this young, beautiful publicist. She's 26 years old, and she's out working for a winery, and she meets this guy, Nick, and he's cute, and he's a little bit older, and he's got a lot of money, and she falls in love with him, and he's got a daughter, but she's away at summer camp, but then the daughter comes back from summer camp, and she meets the daughter, and she's like, oh, hey, let's be friends, and the daughter's like, oh, no, I hate you, which is weird, because she hasn't done anything to make this little girl hate her, and then all of a sudden this twin shows up, and they start torturing her, and then she gets scared and runs away, and yeah.
Good job at remembering his name.
Oh, thank you.
I was just going to refer to him as the father.
No, I believe his name was Nick.
Yeah, I think,
Nick
yeah.
Parker.
Amazing! I am very impressed. You're very good at
Thank
names.
You. So before we dive into Meredith too much, I think there's kind of an elephant in the room that we should address that is not really addressed in the film, but I think to both of us, rewatching this film like stood out like a sore thumb, which is the fact that these parents had twins, divorced, and while the children were young, they each took one of them and made them legally their own, and then never told them that they had a twin or another parent.
Right. All to make it convenient for them.
And okay, so now what if they had only had one kid? What would they have done?
Isn't there like a story in the Bible where they're like, you can only have half of your kid. But then the mother comes and is like, no, don't do it. You can take the whole kid. And that's how they knew that the mother really loved the child. That's like a very bad summary of a Bible story. Anywho, they probably would have...
I'm not familiar with such story.
But they would have been like, all right, here we go, down the middle.
The point is, this is such an unhealthy way to raise a child.
It is, and I wouldn't feel good about myself keeping that from my own child, and I wouldn't feel good about the fact that I essentially gave up the other child forever, because their goal, at least as far as we know, was to keep them a secret forever. Oh,
Right.
I won't even know who that child is for the rest of my life, but I'll have this one. You, as a twin, should be really enraged about this, that it's almost like they equated one twin as being the same. They think of both twins as like the same person. Think about it, because they're like, if they were okay with splitting it, they're like, oh, this is the same person, when they're not. I mean, they're twins.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh man, I know exactly what you mean. It had not occurred to me, but yeah, they're like, we might as well each have one because they're basically the same person anyway. I don't need to have both of them, because if I have one of them, then I've got enough. Yeah. Oh. I don't like that at all.
I couldn't really get over it the whole time I rewatched this film.
No one in that film was mad enough about that.
No.
Like, there was like
No
a
one.
little bit of it. That's
Right.
like a couple points, but even like the families of the two people, the grandpa was like, oh, let's get them back together. He was totally on board with that. And I wonder, like, did he never object before? This is such a bizarre situation. Like, the two people who have a child would divorce in such a way that they like still might like each other, but
I know. It's so weird. And I don't always like empathizing with the villain in a way that talks about how quote unquote bad the quote unquote good people are, because the bad things that they did doesn't really justify what Meredith did or does in the film. But it's something that's just so apparent that I was like, this is so unethical, that I think what Meredith tried to do, if you think that's trying to get Nick's money or being mean, whatever, that's nothing compared to this.
Yeah, I agree. I have the same kind of moral quandary with, like, you can't compare two evils, really. And I think that's a very, not to bring up religion again, but it's a very kind of Christian idea that you can't compare sins.
Right. All sins are bad, basically.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I don't know what my point was to that. It just popped in my head and I said it.
Right. No, that makes sense.
So yeah, interesting to note. But When we really start to think about Meredith, what was striking to me is how little evidence there was that she was a bad person or really was villainous, because she doesn't do really anything bad until after other people start doing bad things to her. And so I'm wondering if we have a problem here with the reliability of our narrators, who are two young children who are in an emotionally difficult place because of what their parents did, and the fact that they just realize that they have a sibling and are meeting their new parents, and they are desperate for love and connection. And so the whole movie is kind of filtered through their eyes. And so we were really set up to see Meredith as a bad person. But I think if we really try to look at the movie from her perspective, then it paints a whole different picture.
Emotions are running wild. The twins really get into their heads. Like, they're very driven to get their parents back together, even though they haven't been together in like 11 years. How do they even know that they're good for them? And then they just go all out in sabotaging someone. So the whole movie, you see her making certain comments or looking kind of mean, but you're looking at Meredith in the way that the twins are looking at Meredith.
Yep. So when we first meet Meredith, she, like we said earlier, she's a young publicist. She's been working for the winery, and she develops this relationship with Nick. I'm going to do my best to tell this from her perspective without even thinking about the twins or what we know from their side of the story. She's fallen in love with this guy. He's got a daughter, but she's away at summer camp. They're in love. They're happy. And then the daughter comes back, and she really does try to connect with the daughter. And she's not someone who is probably inclined to like kids naturally. And that's not a sin. There's nothing wrong with that.
You know, I am not a family gal either.
She's also 26 years old.
Yeah.
Maybe she would grow into wanting to have kids, but this is kind of big for her. But she fell in love with this guy, and the kid wasn't really a part of it, and that's not his fault. No one's fault that the kid was away at summer camp, but you can't help who you fall in love with. So the kid walks in, and she tries to connect with this girl. And she does. Like, she legitimately, like, tries to be nice. And this girl is just nasty to her. All of a sudden, out of the blue, like, all this sass. Where did that come from?
And if I were wearing a nice black dress hanging out in the sun, and I spent a lot of money on that dress, and I always have to look good because I'm a publicist and I'm a young professional, and if that little girl splashes in the pool and she gets me wet, yeah, I mean, I'd be a bit annoyed.
Yeah, so this kid shows up out of the blue. You try to be nice to her. She's really sassy. And then, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a second little girl shows up. A girl that you've never heard of. Did not know she existed because the guy you're dating didn't tell you she existed.
He didn't tell anyone she existed.
No. And so now there are two young girls tormenting you out of the blue. And then, on top of that, this guy's ex-wife shows up.
For the first time in 11 years, guys.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm sure she knew about the existence of this ex-wife, but it's just another thing on top of all these other new things that are happening all at once, which would have been insanely stressful for any person, I think. And then the mom isn't that nice to her either. The mom's pretty sassy, kind of like backhanded compliment in her direction. She's clearly there to try to get her ex-husband back, and she's not really trying to hide it.
I think it's very subtle. Like, you know, when they went on that camping trip and she was like, oh, I'm just not gonna go.
Yes.
I feel like that was strategic.
It was for sure strategic.
I'm gonna show that, sorry, people listening, like, I cannot do a British accent very good. I don't mean to make fun of British accents, guys. Sorry. I think she was just being like, oh, I'm gonna show that I'm not gonna go, to show that I'm stepping out, that I don't care. And when I show that I don't care, then it makes people pay attention to me more.
Ooh, that's not not what I saw.
Oh, what did you see?
I saw. Okay, well, first of all, so back to Meredith. She thinks, okay, they're gonna switch the girls out. They're getting straighten this out, and then we'll be back to normal. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, no one tells her ahead of time. They're packing for a camping trip where her boyfriend is going to go camping with his ex-wife and their two girls. So she's understandably uncomfortable, I think, with that situation. But whatever. And then the ex-wife invites her to come with, basically like peer pressures her and manipulates her into coming. basically like makes it so it's not a choice. And then what I saw is I think the ex-wife knew that Meredith was not going to do well in the woods. And so she stepped out so that the girls could torment her because she knew that was what was going to happen. And she knew things were going to blow up if she didn't come along. I think she was being manipulative in that case.
Yeah, because the wife or the ex-wife knew that things weren't going to go well. And she kind of just like waved them by as Meredith was like grimacing in that Jeep thing.
Yeah.
Going away.
So
yeah.
They get to the woods and they're hiking along to get to their camping spot. And the girls are relentless, like one prank after another. What do? They catch a lizard and they put it on her water bottle to scare her. And then, they move it to her hair. What else did they do?
They put rocks in her backpack. And she would have been a totally fine hiker because she seems very fit.
She looked well built.
So, like, she probably would have been just fine if they hadn't put rocks in her bag. And, they put her on a mattress, and they put the mattress out into the frickin' lake when she's sleeping. And if she wouldn't have been able to swim, and if she would have fallen into the water, I mean, that's a murder conviction right there, y'all. So.
Yeah, in the 1961 version of the film, it was even worse. She was sleeping in the tent and they poured honey on her feet. And then they also like put a bunch of strings and rope all around her tent. So she was like trapped basically. And then she wakes up in the morning to bears licking her feet and is obviously terrified. Who would not be terrified? But everyone else, the girls, the dad, they all act like this is no big deal. They're like, oh, what? A couple of harmless bear cubs?
A couple of harmless bear cubs, but wherever bear cubs go, their mother is very close behind
and also,
them.
I mean, a bear's a bear, right? Like,
I don't enjoy getting my feet licked by bears. I don't know. Maybe that would be nice, and I just don't know it. I don't know. Anywho, I don't, like, even if someone was like, oh, it's harmless, I'd be like, well, when did I ever say I still wanted this? Like, when did I ever say that this would be fun or a good thing for you to do for me?
And she, she's clearly not an experienced camper. And maybe she's not an outdoorsy type person. And that's totally fine. But you'd think that her fiance, who's supposed to care about her, would recognize that and try to, like, help her out and try to make the trip a little more comfortable for her, try to ease her into it. But he's really doesn't do anything for her.
He kind of just makes snide comments like, oh, it's not that hard.
He was not sympathetic towards her at all. So then after all this stuff that the girls do, she like blows up, throws a fit, which I think is totally understandable. I'm not saying that fits are okay, but sometimes
fits are okay.
Yeah, you know what, they are, because sometimes our emotions just take over us. And she's been through a lot, not just from the camping trip, but from all of the last few days of these one girl showing up, two girls showing up, ex-wife showing up, everyone teaming up against her, thrown into a camping trip she wasn't prepared for. And she says perhaps one of the worst things that she says in the entire film, which is, what does she say?
It's either me or them.
Yeah. And the dad...
That's the short version.
Obviously, the dad picks the kids. But I don't know. I don't think this question is as unfair as it seems. I think it was an emotional question in an emotional moment.
Yeah. And I can understand that question because I have to admit, when I first heard it, or, you know, when I rewatched the film very recently, I was like, oh, that's kind of a harsh thing to say. Some people would be like, of course Meredith is very villainous because she is asking this man to give up his own children for her, like his own flesh and blood. And so you're like, oh, that's really shocking. But at the same time, he also gave up half of his flesh and blood. That's true. At one point in time. And because of what she went through on like a weekend camping trip, I honestly do not believe that she would have been able to survive as their stepmother. If they torture her now, they're probably going to keep torturing her, even if that torture, the methods used changes, right? Like when they're kids, torturing tends to be like pranks, like what they did in The Parent Trap. And then it can be emotional and psychological torture in a very tense home. later in life too. So of course she doesn't see that she can survive with them there all the time. She's probably thinking, I don't think I can do this unless they are like out of the house most of the time.
And what really should have happened is the dad or the fiance, Nick, should have said like, hey, we need to like calm down and talk about this. That would have been the responsible thing to do. Instead, they just split up then and there, which may be fine and may be ultimately what they were going to do anyways. But it wasn't a good moment to be making any kind of major decisions when there's so much stress and anxiety going around. I also I know this dad's he's a piece of work. He never really like did anything to stop the kids from being jerks. He was not a good role model to them.
Right. Yeah.
He didn't overtly, but he kind of quietly egged them on. So I don't know. I mean, when you look at the film from Meredith's point of view, I think it's pretty easy to empathize with her.
I do want to say one other thing. I think just in general, and I think you said this too, Disney does a lot of villainizing of step-parents.
Yeah, they do.
And, you know, this movie was just another one of those where it's like, oh, if someone's trying to take away, you know, your father, they're automatically evil. And step-parents already have it hard enough trying to integrate into the family and trying to be accepted by their stepchildren. And then they put out the Parent Trap just to make it harder and teach kids that everyone who wants to date your dad is evil. Meredith had a lot of grounds to date a divorced man. He had been single for 11 years, and even if he hadn't been single for that long, even if he had just been single for 6 months, right? Well, I don't know. We could debate how long it takes to get over someone. But, like, he was single. Like, no one was, like, cheating on no one. No one was the other woman. No one was, like, you know, it's not as bad as it looks from the twins' perspective.
I think, yeah, you're very right. Disney and a lot of movies kind of villainize step-parents as taking something away from the children, when really a lot of times it's adding something for the children. It's adding in this case, a role model of a young, attractive, powerful, strong woman in their life, rather than a mom who thinks it's okay to split up her children and move far away. Meredith might have been a better role model than either of the actual parents.
Let's say Meredith was the ex-wife in that role where they had twins, like Meredith and the father, let's just say, right? She would have banished both of the twins to the father so that at least they could stay with each other and know about each other's existence.
Yeah.
Okay, now the other controversial issue.
Which is, I think, what a lot of people point to as probably the most villainous part of her personality is that she seems to be motivated to marry Nick because he has $1 million.
He has money from running a winery, which is kind of cool. Actually, very suave.
But I would argue that there's not really very strong evidence that that is her primary motivation, because most of what we hear about that comes from characters who don't like her. So before we even meet Meredith, the nanny tells Lindsay Lohan's character, basically tells her that Meredith is just marrying Nick for the money. So that's what we believe. And aside from that, the only other moment we get to kind of back up that claim is this comment she makes to her dad later on in the movie about how rich Nick is, which, yeah, you could say that that is evidence to support that she's in it for the money. But first of all, it's okay for her to like someone for multiple reasons. She can like Nick as a person and like that he has a lot of money. But second of all...
That's why I like my boyfriend.
Because he has a lot of money?
A lot.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I didn't know that.
More money than me. Anyway,
and that's
go
okay.
on.
But also, like, maybe that's all her parents care about, and maybe that's her way of convincing her parents that this is a guy that's worth marrying. because she likes him and she wants them to like him also, and she knows that that will appeal to their vanity and she'll get their stamp of approval.
Exactly. And I feel, you know, even when I was watching the movie, I felt that she genuinely liked him, because I don't think Meredith is someone who would just settle for someone just because of money. Like, she's still a woman of quality.
Yeah.
She wouldn't settle for someone who was a jerk but had money. She wouldn't settle for someone who wasn't very good at anything else but had money. She still has like expectations. She still wants to find other things attractive, I think.
Yeah, and obviously he likes her back and enjoys spending time with her. Otherwise, why would he be wanting to get married to her?
Yeah, and so soon.
And the other thing is, she's doing pretty well for herself. She's 26 years old, so she's not that far out of college, depending on how many, years she took. And she's a publicist doing work for a rich winery. Like, she probably doesn't need money. It kind of looks like her parents are from money. So her family seems to have plenty of money. Like, she might like that he has money, but she doesn't seem like she's in it for the money. She doesn't need it.
And even if money was a big thing to her, even when you think that she's a little bit shallow in that regard, you can't deny that either consciously or subconsciously, you too kind of have requirements for your partner. I wouldn't date someone who didn't have some things going for them, right? Other things besides the fact that they're a good person. I wouldn't date someone who doesn't have a steady job, who doesn't have some money in the bank, who's not very responsible. And I think Nick seems responsible and nice and caring, Yeah, like, you just can't deny that you have those desires too.
Yeah. There are all sorts of different types of people out there who are interested in all sorts of different types of things. And there's no reason you should admit to yourself what those things that you're interested in are and seek them out.
And it wasn't too long ago that people did marry for wealth and status, primarily. So, I don't know, maybe Meredith is just traditional in that mindset.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. So, for our last segment, as a way to help us empathize with Meredith even more, even though I think we're doing a very good job of it, because I didn't realize how easy it was to empathize with her. I'd say she's probably one of the easiest villains to
Yeah. Well, and I think the reason for that is because this is like such a clear case of how just shifting your perspective a little bit can change the way you view something entirely. All we had to do was look at it from her eyes, and all of a sudden, all of these different things about her make a lot more sense.
And, you could even be, the greatest person on the planet or the nicest person in the world, but there will still be people who don't like you. And I think this movie is also an example like that, because I feel like Meredith is a fairly fine person and tries really hard to be good at what she does, but the twins still do not like her.
Yeah. And
right?
Not because of anything about her specifically, at least at first.
Yeah.
Simply because of their worldview, in that they wanted their parents to get back together and that they wanted to be in each other's lives.
That's true. There is kind of that external factor, but then they certainly zeroed in on a few things about her that made them not really like her.
Yeah.
Like, they thought she looked like Cruella de Vil because she's like very successful and stylish and also very assertive.
Yeah. There's a certain amount of misogyny going on with her character, in the fact that because she is a strong, powerful woman, she must be evil because she's not sweet and feminine.
Right. So, yeah, like, you could just be who you are and people will still not like you. And that's really frustrating. And so in order to understand Meredith's frustration, what would be some reasons why the twins wouldn't like you?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question, and it's a good thought exercise, because there are so many things about ourselves that are great things that other people just may not appreciate or may not understand. And so sometimes when we run into people that don't like us, we have to realize that they're approaching us from a different perspective, and they may not know everything about us, and that might be why they don't like us, or maybe they're just different people. That's why I think this is such a great question, because it allows us to recognize that reality And for me, this was not a difficult question at all. I know that to a lot of people, I can come across as kind of cold and unemotional. I'm not very good about expressing my feelings, or I don't have very big facial expressions. So even though a lot of times I am very happy or very pleased to meet someone, it is not clear on my face, especially when I'm first meeting people. I hear a lot, like with friends that I have now, that they feel like when we first met that they thought that I didn't like them because I didn't do a good job of showing it. So I always try to be conscious of that. But I think that is one thing that these two girls might latch on to. They might say, ooh, this person wasn't bubbly and fun, and they weren't smiling as much as we thought they would, so they must be terrible and we hate them. So that's my thing.
Mm-hmm. So if you would have been dating their dad, they would have been like, you're boring.
Yeah, probably.
Or you don't smile when you're riding your horse through the winery.
Yep. And I would hope and I would want them to get to know me before they start tormenting me. Because
that's hard to do, though.
Yeah.
It's hard to talk to them while they're hating you.
Because, like,
they didn't really give people the chance to talk to them.
If they got to know me and then they hated me, all right. But, like...
okay. That's okay.
But you don't even bother to get to know me and you hate me? Not cool with that.
Right.
What about you? Why would these adorable young twins instantly hate you?
If I were dating Nick...
Which, real catch. Good work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, besides the fact that he's a terrible parent because of the...
right.
Yeah, he's otherwise, he's cute, rich, kind of dorky.
I think I know what it is. It's very similar to Meredith in that I do not have very much experience interacting with people who are younger than I am. Mm. Or very much younger than I am, right? 14-year-old, I wouldn't know what the hell to say, really. I'd probably accidentally say something like, oh, do you want to watch Dora the Explorer? And then they'd be like, are you dumb? That's, I don't know. I would just get what their interests are wrong. I wouldn't really be able to tell, like, what they're into. And if they would have been like, oh, I'm having a hard problem with a boy that I like in my class, being older and wiser, I would have just said, tough shit. I don't know. Like, just tell him or move on. I don't know. I probably wouldn't be very sympathetic to their trials and tribulations as a 14-year-old either. Mm. And I think, I get really focused on my own stuff. I'm not here to entertain you all the time. And I feel like the twins just wanted to be entertained like the whole damn movie. So that's a few things. Mm-hmm. Also, I'm a young professional who is young and beautiful. So, that too.
So I'm not laughing at you. Like,
no, that's okay if you are.
I'm not. It was just... the comment in general and the
Well, this has been fun. Meredith Blake is now my role model. Meredith Blake for president. Write her in on the ballot.
No, don't do that. vote for one of the real candidates. Anyways, so thanks for listening. We always love to hear from you, so feel free to reach out at Next Door Villain on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, or at our email, nextdoorvillain@gmail.com.
Yes, please rate our show. We really like ratings. That helps a lot. Talk to us. Send us thoughts, ideas, feelings, verbs, nouns, words.
The episode was produced by ourselves, Joe Anderson and Tiana Hennings. And that's about it.
We have a graphic designer.
Yep.
A person.
Yes.
Mysterious phantom of the opera. Anywho.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening.
Bye. I just smiled thinking that the audience could see me. Like, bye. Like smiled. And then I was like, that was dumb. You can't see that I smiled. Anyway, I smiled. All right. Bye.